Endless Hustle is presented by Eat Clean Bro, a convenient solution to bring you the highest quality chef-prepared meals delivered right to your door. Eat Clean Bro is the contract-free solution for your meal prep needs. Made with all-natural ingredients and next-day delivery, every meal feels like you have someone cooking for you right at home. All right, we've got a great day on the Endless Hustle as I'm joined by the man, the myth, the legend, the one and only Dan Bilzerian. Dan, I mean, you really are. You're legendary status at this point. It's crazy, man.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it's been a crazy ride. Did you end up reading the book?
So I'm just starting the book. The reason that I'm beyond dying to get through it is because of that page 6 article, pretty much saying that nobody would publish a thing and you had to publish it yourself. And I'm like, when I read something like that, I'm like, I'm in. I'm diving full blown in.
Yeah, it's pretty honest, man. I think you'll like it.
Talk to me about, and I want to turn back the clock. Talk to me about the beginning of this whole journey. When does it begin for you in your mind? Like, when does the moment that Dan Bilzerian become Dan Bilzerian?
Well, I mean, interesting. Like kind of the Dan Bilzerian that everybody knows, kind of like the public persona, I would say probably like 2011, 12-ish, maybe something like that. Yeah, it's kind of like when I was like slowing down. Well, I was kind of like still going crazy with the poker stuff, but I started slowing down, I think in like 2014, and focused more on, the partying and, kind of like capturing some of that for social media. So yeah, it's been probably almost like 10 years now. It's crazy.
Your story is so well documented, but you start with the poker stuff. When you start the partying part of it, do you realize that there's a brand to be built? Do you realize like you could actually take what you were doing from a social life perspective and begin to not only gain followers, but also monetize it?
Well, originally when I kind of like started doing it, documenting the whole thing, it was really just to get laid with less effort. There wasn't really much thought, for the monetary side. I just made a crazy amount of money playing poker. And yeah, that was kind of like the last thought in my mind. It was more just like get laid with ease and kind of like have the access and, and it was just, yeah, it was not really on the radar. It wasn't until like around 2016-ish that I started thinking about monetizing it. And I started Ignite shortly thereafter, just because I had just gotten into a relationship and I was kind of like, I've been going super hard for a while. And I realized that even after even like 8 months into the monogamous relationship, not really doing too much crazy shit, like everything was still, I still had all these people coming up to me and I realized that it wasn't just going to shut off. So kind of figured if I had to be taking pictures in a fucking parking lot in 10 years and I didn't monetize it, I'd probably regret it. So I think it was probably around like 2016, 17 that I decided to like probably do something with it,
Every red-blooded American male looks at your Instagram page. And I mean, it's kind of like you're the modern day Hugh Hefner at this point. You're like the Instagram Hugh Hefner. How does it begin where you can start getting all these girls? Like, is it, I've tried to like figure this thing out in my head. Is it like promoters are throwing them at you? Like how did this all begin where all the women just started flocking to you?
Well, I mean, it's all in the book. I started kind of, I think, probably in college was the first time I started actually getting like a decent amount of girls. The military, not much at all. And then before that, not a ton either. So it's kind of, when I went to college and I joined a fraternity and we would have these parties and it was every sorority on campus would come to the party. And I started seeing like the ratio, how important that was. And I was also a little bit older. I was 22 because I just got on the military, done 4 years in the military. So I had that advantage, nobody really wants to bang the freshman guy. So at 22 and haven't been in the military for 4 years. Yeah, I was just kind of like ready to focus more on the school and the girls and all that. And that's when I started getting laid, probably a disproportionate amount of times. It's college.
Yeah, but it's one thing to actually be getting laid a bunch, which a bunch of us have had happen. And then it's another thing to end up on islands with 30, 40, 50 of the most beautiful women on the freaking planet. And then you see the next Instagram picture, it's a new 30 or 40 or 50.
Yeah, I started up in the bar for sure. I would say it was probably craziest around 2015, 16. I would say that was probably like, I would say that was kind of the height of it because I was partying a lot and I wasn't super worried about the social media stuff. I didn't have a company. I was just kind of like focused on partying and getting laid and having fun. It was all new, you know, it was like kind of like I just become famous and people, you know, were coming up to me and it was, you know, it was like hosting clubs and doing all that shit. And like the novelty hadn't really worn off. It was still fun, you know, we were still just, you know, going out and fucking seeing what it was like to kind of be a rock star and all that. And then when I started Ignite, it was more girls. And I think we like upped the volume and the intensity and stuff, you know, like you said, you know, being on a private island with, you know, 20 girls or whatever it was, and then yacht with 30, and, you know, kept like up in the bar. And it was, you know, it actually, I got to the point where it was like actually like too much. Like I liked it when it was like a little bit less girls and it wasn't so fucking crazy because I could still like do what I wanted. Whereas when I had like 30 girls, especially when I was dating a lot of them, I just felt like my energy was being like pulled in so many different directions. It was just like a lot of obligation. And I actually didn't really even have that good of a time, to be honest, when I was like on that yacht with like 30 chicks. It was just too much. I'd like taken it to a level where it was like more was not better, which was interesting. I didn't think I'd ever get there.
So at what point do you realize you're famous? Like when we think about fame, we think about Leo and Brad Pitt and Cruise and these mega A-listers. But I guarantee if I were to walk around New York, where I live, and ask, who is Dan Bilzerian? I would probably get as much recognition for who you are versus who those guys are. At what point did that fame begin to materialize and it became present where you understood it was there?
Well, I mean, I definitely don't think I'm as much of a household name as like Brad Pitt or some of those guys. I actually think I might be more recognizable though. And I think people would also probably feel more comfortable coming up to me. And I think it's probably crazier in foreign countries for me. But in the US, I would have to believe that, you know, Leo would get fucking more attention. It's one of those things also that like I'm easily recognizable too, because I've got a very distinct look. And when that first person comes up, then the second person and the third, and it's like kind of like this fucking, you know, snowball effect where then everybody's like coming up. People that don't even know who the fuck you are coming up because they see so many other people, which is also like kind of a weird thing. But, and I've had that happen, but I think it was like 2014 when I know it was like a very distinct moment. I was in Cannes and I talk about this in the book. And I went to some like bar or club or whatever. And some people started coming up to me and I hadn't really like left my house too much before that. And so I hadn't really seen the effects of it. And I remember Ron Perlman's manager came over and asked me like, oh, like, could Ron come over and say hi? And I was like, yeah, like, of course he could come over and say hi. Like, you know, and so he comes over and he's pitching me on this movie idea that he has. And people keep coming up to me like fucking, I mean, it must've been 15 people in the middle of his pitch. And finally somebody came up and asked him for a picture. And he was like, oh, like, you want a picture with me? You sure you don't want a picture with this guy? And this was like when I was like first kind of like people were knowing who I was. It's like right before I did that Howard Stern interview. And it was just like, it was such a weird fucking thing for me because you know, for me, I was just like fucking around, like posting some shit online. Like they, you know, that was right after I like threw the porn star off the roof. So that got a lot of traction. And what I found is like the international press would actually do a ton. So I'd get like a Daily Mail article or a TMZ, and then everybody around the world would then pick up that same article. And so I ended up like 80% of my following is outside the US. And I think it's due in part to, you know, all the international press, more so than the social media stuff. And like I said, when I was in Cannes, it was just fucking crazy, man. I fucked like 14 chicks in 12 days, which at the time for me was like a really big deal. Later, it didn't, you know, wasn't so fucking impressive. But at the time I was just like, man, that's a lot, you know? And I remember like that figure, and it was, you know, all new chicks. It was like, you know, girls that, you know, would meet in the club and a bunch of, you know, European models and stuff. And I had sex with a girl without talking to her. I mean, it was just like that trip was a big milestone thing for me. I like had sex with a girl in a bathroom, like stone sober in the afternoon. You know, it was just like I was like kind of like pushing the boundaries of what I could get away with. And I found like, you know, the more confidence I had and the more crazy shit that I tried, the more stuff that just worked. And like I said, I literally had sex with a girl without saying one fucking word to her. I mean, it was like, I don't know, man. That was a very, very crazy thing for me at the time.
There's so many areas of your life I want to explore. The first place that I want to start is the military training. You decide you want to become a Navy SEAL. I've talked to other people who have tried the Navy SEAL training, and it's pretty much hell on earth. When you end up going in the military, walk me through that experience.
Well, I just gotten thrown in jail. I had a gun in my car in Utah, and so I got thrown in jail for like 21 days, and then kicked out of the state of Utah, and so I wasn't able to graduate my senior year, and I had to get a GED, and that was kind of like the catalyst for sending me into the military. It was like community college or going to the military, and my dad had done that. My dad was was in Vietnam. He was an officer and like stationed in the Green Beret unit and this whole thing. And then he ended up getting into Stanford and got into Harvard, and he was a high school dropout. So I was like, oh, well, if it worked for dad, it could work for me, kind of thing. And yeah, I just, I'd watched the movie Navy SEALs. It seemed like it was a fucking cool thing to do. And yeah, so that's what I did. I joined the military. I went to Buds, and fucking had about 3 goes at it, and like I made it one day before graduation and ended up getting kicked out. And at the time, I thought it was like the shittiest thing that ever happened to me. But I guess, later on, it turned out to be a blessing in disguise.
How brutal is that Navy SEAL training? I mean, I've heard horror stories, but how really brutal is it?
I mean, it's pretty shitty. The first time I went through, I actually started training with stress fractures, and I wasn't on the steroids. And about 3 weeks after Hell Week, I was just fucking debilitated, like running on stress fractures. It just gets more and more painful. And I wasn't recovering. And so, yeah, that was a fucking nightmare, man. That was probably the shittiest thing I'd ever done. I was 18. I was like, hadn't ever run more than 2 miles. I was inexperienced. I was immature. I wasn't in great shape. I was broken. I mean, it was just like literally the worst case scenario. My class didn't like me. The instructors didn't like me. I mean, it was just like, you couldn't have come up with a worse scenario. And then when I went back the second time, I was fucking juicing. I was fucking in good shape. I'd already done Hell Week. I was 20 years old. Like, I had confidence. It was just like a fucking night and day difference. But going through the first time, natural, broken, was, I mean, I can't think of anything harder.
So you move away from the SEALs and from the military. You're broken kind of at that point. What's going through your head about the next steps of your life? How are you kind of figuring out what's going to happen next?
Well, I mean, I did my 4 years, I got an honorable discharge, and then I went to college. So I wasn't like, I was bummed out, but I did 510 days of fucking SEAL training. Like, I completed 2 Hell Weeks. I was one day before graduation. So like in my eyes, I'd like done it, yeah, like I got kicked out. I didn't get to try it, whatever. But like I really did it to like prove to myself and my dad and everybody that I could do it. I didn't really care so much about like actually being in the military or whatever. So while I didn't fucking get the bird or whatever, in my mind, like I had proven that I was fucking tough enough. I had done like probably more SEAL training than almost any other fucking guy that went through. I mean, Goggins did like three runs through, but most people like do not do 510 fucking days of training. Like, it's a 6-month course. So, I don't know, man. I definitely built some confidence from it. I mean, I was fucking bummed out, but going to college at 22 after doing all that shit was probably a night and day difference than if I had just gone in at 18,
How does the poker playing begin? When do you realize you're a good poker player?
It started in college. My brother taught me how to play, and I was fucking gambling. I had some fraternity brothers. It's kind of like at the beginning of when poker began, and or when like the poker rush began. Like they Rounders had just come out. Chris Moneymaker won the World Series off of $25. I mean, it was like every asshole and their mother, saw this fucking idiot win the World Series and was like, well, if this fucking guy can win, I can win. He's like fucking wearing a fishing hat, drinking a beer, and I don't know. I just, he was probably the best thing to ever happen to poker. And so I got it at the right time. There wasn't really any training programs back then. And I wasn't great initially, and I ended up going broke. And I think going broke and having to like crawl out of that hole gave me the discipline to play good. And then by about, I don't know, 2007, I was pretty damn good. I put in a fucking crazy amount of volume, and yeah, I was probably one of the better poker players at the time.
I want to talk Rounders with you because it's one of my fucking favorite movies, man. I fucking love that movie.
I've probably seen it 200 times, I would say, at least. Like,
Have you ever gotten to talk to Damon or Malkovich or Koppelman or any of the main players around it? Because you have become a famous face of poker. Have they ever either approached you or vice versa, and you've gotten to just chat about the movie?
no, the closest I got to that was Brett Ratner was with Ed Norton and Can, and they text me. Yeah, I'll never forget. It's actually in the vignette that he did for my book, and he said something about like me trouncing the game of life and whatever, mad respect, and I just thought that was pretty fucking cool. But no, I never played poker with any of those guys or met up with them. I mean, yeah, we had some famous guys in there, just nobody from Rounders.
So obviously, if anyone's ever seen the movie Molly's Game, it really shows you kind of that underground Hollywood poker circuit. Did you ever get to participate in any of that? Or were you at tables with Tobey Maguire, Leo, Ben Affleck, any of the big players that were known to have played during that era?
Yeah, no, I played with those guys. I played in her game. She did a vignette for my book. It's actually in there. And so, yeah, I actually I helped her write the first chapter of her book too. Um, and yeah, it was a great movie. It was a very accurate depiction of who she was. And I thought that I forget whatever actress they got to play her, but the fucking girl did a great job. It was like, that's who she was. She was like super sharp, like cold calculated. She ran a good game, and unfortunately things did not work out for her, but it was it was probably one of the best games in LA. She had, Toby was playing all the time, and yeah.
So the actress was Jessica Chastain, by the way. But what were those games like when you're sitting there and you got Toby, you got Affleck, you got all these fucking A+ listers? What are those games actually like? Are they intense? Are they fucking people are laughing? Are people starstruck? What is it actually like at that table?
I mean, everybody's kind of trying to win. There's people fucking around. Like this guy, Bradley Ruderman, he actually ended up getting indicted for some Ponzi scheme thing, but not before he ended up losing like 8 million or something in the fucking game. And, you'd have guys like that in there just fucking dusting off money. And then you had guys like Toby playing super tight, trying to win. And then you had a bunch of hot chicks running around. I mean, it was kind of like, it was the closest thing to like a movie poker game. You know what I mean? Like when you watch poker in the movies and you get the hot chicks in the fucking, slinky black dresses, and everybody's kind of like at the table, and you got the business guys and people smoking cigars. It was like literally like kind of like a movie poker game. Most poker games are like quiet. Everybody's like fucking dead serious. And this was more like kind of like a Hollywood poker game type of thing. But people were focused on the game. I mean, we're playing for big money. People like were more focused on the game and the girls and all the rest of the shit. Like it didn't really distract many people playing that game.
When you would take money off of a Toby or an A-lister, what's that feeling like? Like, would it be like, fuck you, Spider-Man? Like, what were some of the fun shit that ended up getting said or happened during those games?
To be honest, I don't really remember beating Toby out of fucking any money that comes to mind. I mean, I'm sure I did. But he was pretty tight, like if he was in the hand, like he usually had something. He wasn't fucking around too much. He was like there to earn. And I think he was probably capitalizing off, his image and his, like you said, A-list status, whatever. But yeah, I think people played bad against him. He would also like try and like negotiate deals and talk to people in the hands and shit. And I don't know. I never really like fell for any of that bullshit, but there's a lot of people there that were just playing for fun. Like I was there to make a fucking, make money. I was there to fucking earn, same as him. But there's a lot of the guys there just playing recreationally for fun, or, guys like Bradley Ruderman who almost like wanted to fucking lose because, he would lose all this fucking money and people were like, God damn, like how rich is this fucking guy? And he would be like, oh, but I manage a hedge fund and the hedge fund is crushing. And so he actually got, I think a lot of guys in the game to give him money for his hedge fund, which turned out to be a Ponzi scheme. But I think part of his, wanting to play was just literally to like advertise of how rich he was. Cause when you could go into a game and lose $500,000 and it doesn't fucking phase you, you got to have a decent amount of fucking money. Right. So I think, like I said, his was more for like networking and advertising. And I think there were some other rich business guys that were probably in the same boat. So
So there's a great story in the book about how you made $50 million in 1 year playing poker. When you make that kind of fucking money, 50 million is not chump change, obviously. And you talked earlier today about how you were broke at one point. Now that you got 50 million, how does the mindset change at that point? How do you go from being the broke Dan Bilzerian to now, shit, I'm a multimillionaire?
Well, I mean, it was a slow progression. You know, I went broke and then I went to a fucking gambling boat and I turned 10, 500, it was like $750. I sold 3 guns and turned that into 10 grand, and then took the 10 grand, flew to Vegas with a one-way ticket and turned that into 187 grand, playing like 3 weeks straight at the Bellagio, like every fucking day, grinding it out. And then when I came back, then I had like some, newfound confidence and some discipline, and, and I built up the bankroll, but it took a while. I mean, that was, you got to understand, that was like 2004. I wasn't playing these fucking $1 million fucking monster games until probably like 2013, 2012-ish. So, it took a while. I mean, like I said, I had to build a bankroll. I played private games, played Cassavetes game, played some in the casinos. I ended up moving to Vegas. I mean, it was like a whole thing. I mean, it was like literally my life. Like I was playing poker probably like 14 hours a day. And gotten into good spots. We were following the tournament circuit. So we'd go down to like the Bahamas when there was a, PCA tournament. We'd play the cash games on the side, play on yachts. There's always like side games on the periphery of these big tournaments. And I would never really play the tournaments. I never wanted to be known as a good player. It just wasn't my thing. I wanted to play against rich fucking bad players. And that's what I did. And it's weird. Like a lot of guys in the poker world, like just can't wrap their hands around that. Like they're just so fucking stupid. They don't understand that there's like a whole fucking ecosystem outside of their little fucking nerdy poker underworld that's like really fucking easy to make money at. They just don't have access to it because these poker nerds, you spot them a fucking million miles away. But me, I had kind of like the trust fund image and that to, fall back on. And plus I played like pretty aggressively too. So people like playing with me. And I had, some kind of a personality. So it was a whole thing. I mean, part of poker is getting into these games. And in order to get into these games, people have to want to play against you. They have to look at you as being an action player. There has to be like some kind of sub story. I mean, it's a whole thing. I mean, like I said, a lot of people tried to get in and a lot of people were rejected. So getting in was a big piece of my success.
It's funny because to hear you talk about it, one of my favorite movies is The Color of Money with Paul Newman and Tom Cruise. And it's the exact same type of mindset. The tournaments are essentially to set up all the off tournament games where you make the fucking real money. And I'm listening to you.
It's funny that a fucking non-poker player figures this out in about fucking 3 minutes, but these fucking poker idiots just still like can't wrap their hands around the fact that I fucking made money. And the funny thing is, there's so many like legitimate poker players that know for a fact that I made this fucking money too. Like people like, for instance, Andrew Roble, he had 5% of me when I played Alec Gores. He was like coaching me on the heads up and everything. And so he had 5% of every win. So it literally like tracked out. It was like, $40-ish million that I beat from Alec alone. And, and he had 5% of that. So he saw every fucking wire that came. It's not like up for debate. I like posted these wires. Like, that's why it's like so fucking strange to me. These idiots can't like understand. I mean, I beat Sam for probably $10 million. I mean, I think just my pieces of Rick Solomon when he played Andy Beal was like around 20 million. And so like right there's $70 fucking million I made, and that's not counting the people that I sent to Macau, all the players that I took pieces of. Like when I ran my private game, like I was, bringing in a bunch of money in my private game. Just everybody that won would tip me 3% of the win, 3 to 5%. And then I had pieces of like some of the good players in the game. I was winning in the game. And it was just like money was coming in from so many different fucking ways. I mean, I made, I don't even remember. I think we made like 17 million bucks on the sports betting account that I set up. My buddy, he had like this MIT fucking guy figure out a whole algorithm for basketball. And he basically said, like, you get an account and I'll give you 30% free roll. So you get 30% of all the wins and you have no downside. And so he went onto my account and just would be firing on all these fucking games. And like I said, I think we made like 17 million before they cut us off, so I had money coming in from that. I had money coming in from pieces. I mean, it was just, there was so many opportunities in gambling to make money when you're surrounded by rich guys and you've got some, good players that you could stake or take pieces of, because a lot of these games were playing too big for these poker players to take all their action. So you would have the opportunity to get it at like face value when they were a massive favorite. So, I would just consistently like, bankroll people and do stuff like that. So, yeah, I made a ton of money, playing poker and staking people in poker.
Where do you get more enjoyment out of? Do you get more enjoyment out of the money you win or being able to just fuck people and beat people?
For me, it was always about the money. I wasn't really a shit talker. I wasn't one of those people that, kind of like needled people, none of that. I wanted people to want to play with me, and I wanted them to like want to gamble with me. And I didn't want to like gloat. Like if I won money, I acted like it wasn't a big deal. And the more I acted like it wasn't a big deal, the more they felt like it wasn't a big deal. It's like the people that you didn't want to lose money to was the people that you felt like that money would change their life. So it was always important to me for people to like think that I had more money than I did, because then they wouldn't mind losing to me as much, so that was like a part of it too. So for me, man, it was like a fucking, it was a hustle, man. Just like you said, the fucking color of money. Like I want to make the most amount of money, by any means necessary. And that's what I did.
I've always wondered why you don't have a reality show. You check every box that every network would want: social media following, regular following, controversial, polarizing. Have networks ever come to you? I'm sure they have.
5 words. I don't fucking want one. That's why.
Really?
Yeah, no interest, man. What the fuck's it gonna do for me? Like I already have money, fame. Like it's not gonna like it's literally gonna be an invasion of privacy, and it's not gonna move the needle for money in any way, shape, or form. It's not gonna move the needle for fame. Like, I mean, I'm getting fucking like 70, 80 million impressions per post. Like a hit TV network gets 1 million views an episode. Like I get 20 to 45 million views a post. Like it's not like it's gonna fucking improve my like, fucking recognizability. Like, you know what I mean? People do that shit to like break out, or they do it because like they're fucking washed up and they have nothing else going on. Like I don't think people that have money fucking are like dying to do reality shows. It's just, I don't know. And I think TV is kind of like a dying thing anyways. Like I don't feel like people really watch TV much anymore.
But I mean, no platform, forget about even if it's just not television, Twitter or TikTok. I mean, someone hasn't come to you, Zuckerberg hasn't pulled up the Brinks truck and said, Bilzerian, write your check. What do you want?
No, man, I don't think Zuckerberg needs me in any way, shape, or form, and so no, they haven't really offered me shit. That I think that's one of the biggest problems with Instagram and Facebook, is that they don't offer any money for their people, their celebrities or influencers or whatever. And so I think that's why OnlyFans is thriving so much, is because it's like a way for people to actually monetize their following in a way other than running like fucking Skinny Bunny tea ads and shit, So, yeah.
When you have that type of following, I mean, the number you just dropped, 70 to 80 million impressions a fucking post, is mind blowing to me. When a brand comes to you, and obviously you have Ignite, and we'll talk about that in a second, but when a brand comes to you and they say, Dan, hey, we want you to post XYZ, you don't have to necessarily tell me the rates for it, but how do you determine the rates when you're bringing that type of traffic to a brand?
I just say no to all of them. I don't really do like brand promotional posts. I mean, I'm like focused really on Ignite right now. So that's my main focus. And that's really that's really the only reason I'm even kind of still posting on Instagram, to be honest with you. We've got these nicotine vapes that are just absolutely fucking murdering it right now. We're in South America. We're in the fucking UK. We're going in the fucking EU. We're in the UAE. We're in Armenia. We're going to Russia. Like, it's, our vapes are really fucking taking over, and that's really my primary focus right now. I care less about the rest of the stuff, to be honest.
Let's talk about the beginning of Ignite. So where does the idea hatch in your mind? How do you begin it? How do you build this whole thing?
Well, it started really fucking far from where we landed. But initially the thought was, weed is legal in Nevada. I want to open a dispensary. I want a bunch of hot chicks working there. I want that to be a thing. And it was just a motherfucker. Like the licenses were super expensive. It was hard to find a partner that like got it. And so I just, kind of like treaded water with that, trying to find a good partner and trying to do that right for about a year or so. And then they were doing a lot of like RTOs, reverse mergers and stuff like that with Canadian public shellcos. And that was kind of a popular thing. And I partnered with a buddy of mine for that. And we went up to Canada. We did a road show, raised like $10 million. And that was kind of the game plan. And we were going to have a grow, and we were going to, do that whole thing. And then our investors were like, oh, we don't really want to do a grow because I think it's a depreciating asset, yada, yada, yada. You're better off just to buy from a grower, and then we can operate in multiple places. And, and then, you just basically build the brand. And so that was kind of the direction we were going to go down. But we, I don't know, it was like going back and forth. I wanted to kind of like give the people their money back, but then they're like, no, you can't do that. So then I went out and raised 30 million bucks on my own. And, because we hadn't really finalized the deal for the Canadian Pubco. So I just kind of like raised the money on my own, started going fucking crazy, got the Ignite house, and started, throwing parties and really just focused on the marketing really before we even had like product to market. I just figured like it would catch up, like let's just make some fucking noise. Let's get an international brand, and then we'll figure out the products. And it was a bit naive, thinking that we could kind of like backfill. I mean, we could, but like we probably didn't get the max value because it took us longer to get product to market than we anticipated. Not to mention we were really like only focused on a few US markets due to the cannabis regulations. And really the whole time the answer was nicotine. And that's what I wanted to do. We like partnered with the wrong company that had given up their US nic rights. It was this whole fucking nightmare. But like a year and a half ago, we finally got it right, and we got the right partner, and we've been doing the disposable flavored nicotine vapes, and they've just been fucking crushing it. So that's really like the new business model focus, is that and the beverages. And we pulled out of cannabis completely. Cannabis is like the most shit business to fucking be in.
Well, everybody's in it now. That's a problem. First of all,
they're all
ultra
losing money,
saturated.
I mean, they're all losing money. The black market's the only ones that are fucking really doing well. It's really kind of like a survival right now until it federally legalizes. And then, whoever's left standing will probably do okay. But for me, like, I don't want to wait. Like, I want to fucking make money, and we're doing that Nick. And also Nick is something that we can sell all around the world, and I can capitalize on my following. So that's, really what we're focusing on now.
How much does your following and your ability to market the product actually drive the results of the sales of the product?
It's hard to like quantitatively say that, but I know it has a massive impact because we're getting great reception in like South America. And I see all these people reposting our vapes, and they're like smoking the vapes and tagging, and like a lot of it's in Spanish. So it's like, it's all over the place. And I see them doing it, in Dubai. I see them doing it in the fucking EU. And so it's spreading, and it's effective, and people want to be a part of the brand. And I think it's one of the few brands that's around that kind of like still has some identity and some balls. And it's not, this fucking super fucking woke bullshit where, we're like pandering to everybody, and we're worried about this, and we don't want to have any white people in the company. And we're like doing anti-white training and apologizing for everything. So I think, that probably resonates with people. I mean, like the state of affairs in the world is such a fucking joke right now that I think a brand that actually like has some fucking balls and isn't going to like cave to whatever fucking, new fucking ideal comes out next week is probably refreshing. And I think also in South America and in some of the foreign countries, they don't really have any real strong brands. So we're one of the few brands that people know, like there's Juul, but that's more of a device. It's not really a brand. Like when you think of like Red Bull, you think of extreme sports. You don't necessarily even think of the product as much as you do like what the actual brand identity is. And so I think we've got some good brand identity. And it's like, it's a lifestyle brand. It's about, kind of unapologetically being yourself and doing what the fuck you want to do, and not worried about, what everybody else is fucking doing and what you're supposed to do. And it seems to be resonating pretty well. So
what is your greatest learning through the Ignite process, but also your greatest mistake?
Man, made a lot of mistakes in the beginning, learned a lot for sure. It's been a fucking battle. I mean, I thought it was going to be a lot easier than it was. We were fucking generating all this hysteria, and we had all this momentum and this and that. And it's just like, really weren't capitalizing on it, like I said, because we just didn't have product to market. We weren't in enough places. Like people just wanted to buy, but they couldn't buy. And so that's why the nicotine's just done so well, is because we can get it to market. We can get it out to all the foreign countries. People can buy it. It's a great device. It's got the lowest failure rate in the industry. And yeah, so, you you can have a fucking great brand, but if you don't have products to market, if you don't have that shelf space, you're never going to do well, you know, and getting that shelf space is a lot harder than I previously anticipated. So yeah, it's been a lot of learning.
You talk in the book about having 2 heart attacks before 32 years old. And I mean, I'm just thinking to myself, listen, I had a great 20s, but I never had any heart attacks, knock on wood. How fucking crazy did it get to drive you to actually have heart attacks?
Man, I was like a 4-day bender. I was snowboarding and I've been partying and, you know, was at a strip club and ended up banging the stripper. And I just like took way too much Viagra. I'd never taken Viagra before. It was just a perfect storm of dehydration. I was on this horse steroid, which probably gave me fucking too high a red blood cell count. I mean, fuck, man, you could have thrown darts at a fucking board for the reasons and probably been right fucking 9 out of 10 times. I mean, I'm sure all these things contributed. But yeah, it was an eye opener, man. It was definitely a fucking eye opener. I thought I was bulletproof. You know, I'd done so much crazy shit in the military and been through some, I mean, I'd stayed up for 5.5 days straight with no fucking sleep, run 144 miles total throughout the week with boats and telephone poles and gotten hypothermia. And you know what I mean? Done all this shit that I'm just like, well, fuck, a little coke's not going to kill me. You know, fucking some stripper's not going to, you know what I mean? Like all this stuff just seemed like little road bumps. But you know, when I was in the military, I obviously wasn't on drugs, and you know, drugs, you know, especially when combined with other ones can fucking have negative effects, as I saw. So it was an eye opener, and I stopped doing Viagra after that. That was the one and only time I'd taken Viagra.
How do you know you're having a heart attack? Like, at what moment were you like, shit, I'm having a heart attack?
I didn't know. I had no idea. In fact, you know, had some pain in my shoulder and I was like trying to do push-ups. I like fucking called the family doc. I had no clue. Like heart attack didn't enter into the realm of fucking possibility of things. In fact, like so much so that when I was in the whatever, the ER or whatever that waiting room was, like I offered the lady $10,000, like, let me see a fucking doctor. And she wouldn't let me see a doctor. I'm like, I'm having a hard, like I gave her the signs, like I was having a hard time breathing, like all this stuff. We're like, if I had been 20 years older, they would have like admitted me immediately, been like, oh, this guy's probably had, nobody even considered it. I was the youngest guy ever admitted to the hospital that ever had a heart attack, they said. And so, yeah, it was as much of a surprise to me as it was for them, I think.
So when you go through that, what's your mindset after that, besides the no Viagra rule? But I have to ask you, how the fuck can you sleep with all these women without any type of assistance? Like, what the hell are you?
And testosterone and stem cells. So don't worry, I have assistants. I've got all the assistants. I've got everything.
That's the golden triangle right there.
Yeah, it certainly wasn't some fucking great genetic fucking mutation that I had. It was, no, it's drugs.
Yeah. So when you switch out of that, do you have this kind of like epiphany where you're like, all right, I've got to shift my life around. I can't be doing this, besides the Viagra part of it. Or were you kind of like, shit, whatever, I got through this, let's keep trucking?
Yeah, get back on the fucking horse. There was about a fucking 2-day downtime. I even fucked my ex-girlfriend in the hospital. I got high and I banged her with the fucking cords hanging out and all this shit. Yeah, a lot of bad decisions, but you know, fuck. What are you gonna do? I mean, it was like they like told me I had to take these pills for the rest of my life. I like looked at all this shit. I'm just like, you know what? Fuck that. I'm just like, if I die. I'm not taking all these fucking pills like forever. Like no fucking chance. And I didn't, and I'm still here. So
you continue with the partying, you continue going. How do you maintain this whole thing? Look, I'm 43 years old, man. I had a great 20s and a really great 30s. I'm at a point, like you're a little younger than me, but I'm at a point where I'm like, I can do maybe one night, maybe 2 in a row, and I'm shut down. How are you able to actually maintain this type of stamina to continue to do what you do?
Well, I don't party as much as people think that I do. I think that's probably a common misconception. I fuck a lot, but I'm not like always getting drunk and fucking doing ecstasy and shit. You know, like for me, I mean, I've done an ecstasy like a handful of times my whole life. I've drank probably, I don't know, man, in my whole life, probably less than like 40 or 50 times, like my whole life. Maybe, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, 50. I'd say probably under 50 if I had to guess. Because there was years when I didn't drink once in the whole year. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I don't get fucked up as much as people think. I mean, smoking weed and fucking girls is like not really that hard to maintain. And that was a lot of my adult life, was just getting high, having sex, working out, showering, eating, pretty healthy, believe it or not,
Fame is such a hard thing to handle, Dan. So when you become famous, and again, you're going through this orgy type lifestyle that you've built, how do you meet someone real? Like, you've had girlfriends, but how do you know when someone's in it for you versus the Instagram fame versus the money versus the whatever?
It's hard, man. It's not just with women. It's hard on all sides. Everybody seems to want something from you. The more you have to offer, the more you've got to kind of have your guard up a little bit. And it's human nature. Look, like when I was coming up, I wanted fucking money from rich guys too. I get it. It's normal. You see a guy with a lot of money, you see a guy with a lot of girls, you're like, I want some of that, it's just common. But so I guess it's more isolating than anything, but it's, you just have to kind of use your judge of character. I mean, that was one of the things that I, got pretty good at playing poker, was figuring out, fucking people's intentions, whether or not they're being honest, you're just reading people all the time. You're constantly looking at somebody, you're fucking looking them in the eye, you're looking at their fucking body language, and you're seeing it too. Like when you make that fucking big call and you're like, you have a feeling that the guy's full of shit, you make that call and he is full of shit or he's not full of shit, like you process all that information, so every time, and there's a lot of fucking money on the line, there's a lot at stake, right? So you pay attention, you pay very close attention, and when you're wrong, you remember you're fucking wrong, and when you're right, you remember you're right, and so if you do this long enough, you start to figure people out. And I think, part of what I wrote in the book was, the human psychology of this, like why women do the things that they do, why certain things work, like for instance, there was a girl that like I really wanted to bang, and when I stopped caring and started fucking some other girls and actually like banged some girls like pretty much in front of her, that's when I ended up fucking her. And like most people like, oh, that would never work, but they don't understand like the psychology of it. And for a super hot girl, like the thing that she sees the least is probably a guy that doesn't care, So when you truly don't care, and when you do things that show that you don't care, it actually makes them more interested in you than when you do what every other fucking guy does and cater to them and try and like, do the nice guy bullshit. I'm not saying be an asshole to women. I'm just saying like, understand that like pandering to them and like, doing all this stuff, they see right through it. They know like your motivation is to stick your dick in them. So if you're doing all these fucking things for that objective, it doesn't make you a nice guy. It means you're fucking, like really desperate, or you really want it bad enough, right? So all these positive things that you do that in your eyes seem to be positive are actually fucking like held against you, because it just shows like how much you're willing to do to get laid. And for a woman that's like constantly being hit on, that's actually a negative. So there's a lot of, things that I think I've benefited from playing so much poker, and, the psychology and reading people is probably top of the list.
Was there ever anyone throughout this journey who you thought could have been the one where you were like, this might be the person that I actually could pull the trigger on?
Yeah. Jessa, I gave her, a couple chapters in the book. She was definitely my first love, the first girl that I like really connected with on a bunch of different levels. She just unfortunately turned out to be a fucking train wreck, but she had all the fucking tools, man. She was super hot. She was super smart. She was really witty, fun to hang out with, good personality. She had all like the hardest things to get, and then everything else kind of sucked. But the really important shit, she had that on lock. So that was a tough one, That one definitely stung.
When you were writing the book, because, and we were joking at the beginning of this interview that page 6 was like too controversial, but that's who you are. You're going to put it all out there. When you're writing the book, were there ever moments where you're like, well, maybe this might be going too far, or I shouldn't name this person, or you were just like, fuck it, I'm Bilzerian and I'm going with it?
Yeah, there's like a couple. So some of the names, like I actually excluded one celebrity name, which I was like kind of bummed out about, because it actually made the story way fucking better. Cause I was like in my closet, it's like 2000, I don't know, 14 or 15. And I'm in there like, hooking up with these two chicks. And I like look over, and this fucking big A-list celebrity is getting his dick sucked in my dark ass closet wearing sunglasses. And it was just like a lot funnier because it was him, but I didn't really like want to put him on blast, And so I didn't. But for the most part, like if the names are applicable and they matter and people would recognize them, like I just leave them in there, because I tell all my fucking bad shit too. So it's kind of like, I don't know. I mean, I'm not like ratting people out, but at the same time, like I got to tell my story, and like, I don't know, getting Bieber laid in Cannes, was a fucking, kind of a, important piece, So like, I don't know, there's like some people I named, but it's not like, I don't know, malicious or whatever. It's just because I want to tell my story. And, they're, because it was him, it was interesting. If it was some fucking random dude that I fucking, got laid, it wouldn't matter. Right. So there was sometimes, and then with the girls, I changed some names, just because there wasn't really any benefit from putting their name in. And I didn't, some of them are fucking married, some of them kids, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not trying to like ruin people's lives, to tell my story if I don't have to. So, yeah, I tried to be like, respectful of people, but at the same time, like I said, I have to tell the fucking story. So
That would be hilarious. Like Jess in Iowa somewhere, all of a sudden your book is out and the husband's reading it and he's like, wait, what the fuck?
oh, there's 100% some of that shit in there for sure. Like, and there's girls that I named that like I was fucking that had boyfriends for sure. And there was definitely gonna be some fucking turmoil because of this. No two ways about it. But I don't know, man. There was like important lessons in there too. And at the end of the day, like I've always been like a super honest guy. So I don't really like, I don't know. Like for me, I don't have a lot of remorse for people that are like cheating and lying and doing the fucked up shit. Cause like I said, I just always wore that shit on my sleeve. And the one thing I asked for was honesty. And I saw girls do so much fucked up shit, man. Like there's one girl that came on vacation and she was like, basically almost naked on the plane before we even got to my place. And we're like at my house and she's like, oh, I want to watch you fuck this girl. And I was like, okay, cool. So I'm fucking this girl in my theater and she's watching. She's like, oh, like, I want you to come my face. I'm like, okay, so I'm fucking this chick. She's like, don't forget. I'm like, don't worry, I'm not gonna, I'm still fucking this girl. And then, like finally she's like, fucking insisting I come on her face. I'm like, okay, cool. So and like, meanwhile, her boyfriend's like texting her, fucking blowing her phone up. She finally ends up blocking the guy, fucks me later that night. And then like, fucks me again the next day and like, crazy shit and whatever. And then she like unblocks him on day 3 and is like, have you fed the dog? And it was just like, what the fuck, man? This girl's like cold as ice. And then like on the way home, she's like, I want to fuck you again. I was like, okay, cool. Like, just tell your boyfriend the flight's delayed or something. I don't know, And so she like texting this guy and he's like texting my assistant at the same time. And my assistant's like, no, the flight's on time, And so I finally like, we figured out that it was my fucking idiot assistant texting this fucking guy, like chucked the fucking pillow at his head. And I was like, stop fucking texting people. And so anyway, so he was like camped out in front of my house and like sent her a picture of the car, like going into the driveway. And she still fucked me even with this guy, like knowing, it's just crazy, and like, I don't know, man. Then I was like on a yacht in where the fuck was I? I was, it's off the Amalfi Coast somewhere. And she texted me. She was like out there with her fucking boyfriend. She's like, hey, like, I want to come see you. I'm like, I'm on a boat. She's like, well, could I helicopter onto the boat? I'm like, no, probably not. Like, she's like, what is it? A small boat? I'm like, no, it's like 175 feet. We don't have a fucking helipad. And I don't know my fucking coordinates anyways. Like, this is just ridiculous. And then like 3 days later, she blocks me. And then 2 days after that, there's like an engagement ring posted on her fucking Instagram. Like, it was just, you just see shit like that. You're just like, God damn, like, fuck, I would not want to be that guy. And it was just, there's just so many girls that would do fucked up shit like that. Like literally be like texting their boyfriend, while I'm banging them or just fucking, I don't know, man, just crazy shit. And like I say in the book, I kind of like stopped hooking up with girls that had boyfriends unless like they were cheating on them anyways. But yeah, I don't know. Hard to trust.
The one thing I haven't touched on, and it was a question that I was thinking about, which is the one thing that people may not realize about Dan Bilzerian, but I think I realize what it is. Behind all of this, you're actually kind of a genius in terms of building businesses, being an entrepreneur, understanding branding, understanding marketing. Do you ever feel like people underestimate you for all the good qualities that you have as a businessman because of what you've built as a public persona?
Yeah, I mean, I've been underestimated my whole life, and I actually made a career out of it. Like my poker career was made off of people underestimating me and thinking that I was a rich idiot. And, so I kind of like played that fucking role, And so I think one of the reasons why I was successful is I understand what resonates with people. I understand like, because part of poker also is like understanding like, how does he view me? Like, what do I think that he has? And then what do I think that he thinks that I think that he has, you know, and like there's like levels to this shit, you know, like how I perceive you and then how I believe that you perceive me. And so there's a lot of that, you know, so you kind of have to like get in people's heads. And I think, you know, part of the social media stuff is like just understanding like what resonates with people, what people want to see, you know, and you see that when you get the feedback and you get instant feedback, you know, when you post something, you get the likes, you get the comments, you get, you know, the whatever. And so you're able to like figure out like, okay, what do people want to see, you know, because to me, I wouldn't just post based on that, you know, like I posted a lot of shit that I knew wasn't going to do well because I just thought it was cool, you know, like some of the coolest shit I've done, like I surfed some fucking 30-foot waves in Kauai, I fucking jumped a trophy truck, you know, like $1 million truck. And like, I've done some fucking really cool shit, stuff that I think is really cool, but that people just really don't give a fuck about. And it's just kind of funny to me, you know, they see big tits and they just like smash the like button, but you know, you're like risking your life, you're doing some fucking badass adrenaline shit. And they're just like, whatever, you know, like I've seen cooler, you know? And so, yeah, it's, you know, it was a learning process, but I think I, you know, got pretty good at it.
What's the goal? What's the end goal of this whole game for you?
I want to make Ignite super fucking successful. And then I want to sell it and just focus on things that make me happy, you know, like down the line, sell the company and just, you know, do shit that makes me happy.
What makes you happy?
A lot of things, hanging out with my buddies, helping people out, traveling, you know, I like all the, you know, sports stuff, the free diving, the MMA, the, surfing, you know, just stuff that doesn't really cost a lot of money, surprisingly. So, yeah, I don't know why I need to make all the fucking money. I don't know. For me, it's a milestone. Like I really want to become a billionaire and then just literally stop. Because I've spent so much of my life focusing on like accumulating wealth. And I think like once I get past $1 billion, I think then I can just really put that one to bed. Kind of like I did with the chicks a little bit. Not that I'm like done fucking girls, but I've like proven to myself that like, okay, dude, you can get pussy, you know, like I get it. Like you had a perceived lack when you're younger, you've climbed the mountain a lot, you know, a lot of fucking times. So you've done that, you know, and then the social media thing, like I wanted to get famous and I fucking did that, you know? So there's a lot of things that I like set out to do that I like feel like I really fucking did. And I like took to the end of the earth. The money for some reason, I don't know, like I know the money is not even directly correlated with happiness, but I just see this opportunity to fucking do really well. And I want to just, you know, fucking stay till the job is done. And I want to make, you know, like I said, over $1 billion. And I want to just not ever focus on money again.
I want to talk to you about the UFC before we go, because I'm a huge UFC fan. What are your thoughts about some of the fighters today? Who are some of your favorites? How did you become a lover of the UFC? Tell me it all.
I mean, I watched UFC 1, you know, I remember when it started. So, I was doing judo training in Tampa, Florida, and I started doing that in like 1998, and that was around about the time when the UFC was, you know, starting. And I don't know, man, I've been in it from the very beginning. It was always fascinating to me. Like, you know, you grow up, it's like, who would win in a fight, Superman or Batman, you know, or whatever, right? So you're like, you know, who would win in the fight? The fucking, you know, the bear or the fucking silverback? Who would win in the fight? The sumo wrestler or the fucking karate kid? Like you just always, as a kid, ask yourself these things. And it was like the one sport where it kind of like answered those fucking questions, right? Like, what is the best, you know, form of self-defense? You have all these fucking like Taekwondo guys like talking about how fucking badass they were. But then like you get to see it, like, is this guy badass or is he just talking shit? You know, like that's where the fucking rubber meets the road. And you see, you know, people going there, you know, in the beginning, I don't even think they had weight classes. They didn't have rounds, you know, so it was like about as close to a fucking street fight as you were going to get. And it was just extremely interesting to me. You know, I'm surprised it took so long for it to take off, but Dana, you know, did a really good job with that. I would say the one thing the sport's suffering from the most, in my opinion, right now is just kind of like everybody's gotten so good that it's hard to have guys that you've been like rooting for a while, you know, like the old Anderson Silvas, the old GSPs, the fucking, you know, the guys that were like on top for a long fucking time, Mighty Mouse, whatever. There's like so many of these guys that were just greats and they were, you know, fucking, I don't know, man, they were just on top for a long period of time, uncontested. And I feel like the sport is missing that now because everybody's so fucking good that like anybody on a good day could beat, you know, the fucking best guy on his bad day kind of shit, you know? And so it's like, is the guy going to have a bad day? Is he going to get unlucky? And not saying there's not greats in the sport right now. I'm just saying like there isn't dominance in my opinion like there was in the past, just because everybody's gotten so good. And so I would say that that would be the one thing that's, that's tougher, is just that, you don't really have as many like household names, other than like Conor McGregor and, John Jones, who's been having, issue after issue.
Yeah, I mean, the two that I love are Kamaru Usman and Francis Ngannou. Obviously, those guys are absolute assassins. They're
Usman's a
unbelievable.
beast. Yeah, I forgot about him. Yeah, no, he's a fucking monster. He's in the realm of those fucking greats. So, I guess I stand corrected. He's definitely up there.
Dan, this has been an absolute pleasure. The book is called The Setup. Of course, Ignite and everything you're doing with that company is incredible. And you are a man, a myth, a legend, man. I can tell you that every guy in my community in New York, and I'm from Philly, they're kind of just like in awe of you to a certain degree, because again, you have created this aura of what every guy wants, whether they may want it or not want it, but the picturesque part of it seems to be what every guy wants. And you did kind of the visual creation of it for everybody.
Yeah. I mean, I did what I set out to do, I really fucking did. And I did, and I took it to the end of the earth. And I think the book will be very interesting for all those people, that have been watching the journey and kind of like, wondering what I'm like. Is this really like, kind of like the emperor has no clothes type of thing. I just like talk about all the embarrassing shit, the good, the bad, and the ugly in there. So you really get the full picture and see, where I started and where I landed and how I got there, and what I learned along the way. So I think, for the fucking people that have been, watching the journey, I think it'll be even more interesting because they've been wondering for so long,
Dan, it's been an awesome chat, man. Thanks for a great hour, brother.
Cool. Enjoy the book.
See you, brother.
All right, bud.
Take care.